He stood in the middle of the prayer room, laughing like a madman. Not the kind of laugh you hear when something is funny, but the kind that is soaked in pain, betrayal, and frustration. He clapped slowly, sarcastically. Then he looked up at the ceiling, the spot where he always imagined God was listening from. "Bravo!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty room. "Well done, God. You're truly the master of silence." No one else was there. Just him. The walls, the wooden bench, the old Bible left on the altar, and his shadow. He had come to this church every week for 2 years. To pray, to cry, to beg, to scream. But nothing changed. His life had only grown darker with each prayer. He lost his job, just 2 weeks after he fasted for 7 days. He buried his daughter, the same day he gave his last money as a seed offering. His wife walked away on their anniversary. And now he was standing in a place where he once knelt in faith. But today there was no kneeling, no faith, no reverence, just a broken man, mocking the God he once believed in. He picked up the microphone from the pulpit and held it like a comedian at a nightclub. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted into the empty church, "let's welcome the Almighty, the great silent listener, the one who watches you drown but won't move a finger." Tears rolled down his face, not because he found it funny, but because he didn't know how else to cry anymore. He had run out of tears. Pain had turned into mockery. Faith had turned into bitterness. At the back of the room, the janitor watched silently through the small crack of the door. She had seen him pray here so many times. She had heard his cries, the way he shouted, "Lord, help me," like a boy begging for his father. But today was different. His cries had turned into jokes. His lips, which once trembled with worship, were now twisted in sarcasm. He pointed at the cross hanging on the wall. "You're probably sitting up there, smiling at how useless my prayers have been, right?" He dropped the mic. Then he walked down the aisle slowly, dragging his tired feet. As he reached the door, he stopped. He turned back one last time, and with a bitter smirk, he said, "If you're truly there, do something. Otherwise, stop acting like you care." And he left. 2 days later, something happened. He was brushing his teeth in front of the mirror. He yawned lazily, and suddenly his mouth refused to close. At first, he thought it was a muscle cramp. He tried to force it shut with his hands. It didn't move. He slapped his face. Nothing. He poured water in his mouth, hoping it would relax. It spilled out. His lips had locked in an open, stretched position, like a scream frozen in time. He rushed to the hospital. The doctor checked him, asked him to speak. He couldn't. His tongue felt heavy. His jaw was numb. His lips paralyzed. Scans came out clear. X-rays were perfect. No nerve damage. No fracture. No stroke. No sign of sickness. Just one unexplained reality. His mouth was stuck open. Wide. Dry. Silent. The doctor scratched his head. "I've never seen anything like this in my entire career," he said. The man tried to write on a paper. The words came out shaky. "Help me. What's happening to me?" By the 3rd day, his mouth began to hurt. His cheeks were sore. His throat was burning. His jawbone felt like it was tearing apart. He hadn't eaten. He couldn't sleep. His eyes were red from crying, but his lips stayed open like a door without hinges. His family brought in pastors. Nothing changed. They brought in psychologists. No difference. One of the nurses whispered to the wife, "We heard he cursed God in a church. Maybe it's not a medical problem." The wife broke down crying. She had begged him to stay faithful. She had watched him grow bitter day after day. But she never imagined it would get this far. On the 5th day, he was taken back to the same church. Back to the room he mocked God in. This time, he couldn't talk. He couldn't shout. He couldn't insult. He could only fall on his knees, mouth wide open, eyes swollen with regret. The same mic he held to mock God sat silently on the pulpit. He wrote on the church wall with a marker, "I'm sorry. I was hurting, but I didn't mean to mock you." He collapsed there, weeping silently. And for the first time in 5 days, a sound escaped his mouth. Not words, just a soft, broken groan. That night, while he slept on the church floor, something happened. But what he woke up to was not what anyone expected. And what God did next was not a punishment. It was a reminder that even silence speaks. It was around 3:12 a.m. The air inside the church was still. He lay on the cold floor, his head resting near the altar, mouth still wide open, eyes swollen from crying, heart pounding from exhaustion. He hadn't said a single word in 5 days. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. Yet that night, after surrendering everything, including his pride, something changed. Not in the room, not on the altar, not even in his body. Something shifted inside him. A calmness, a soft whisper in his heart, not from outside, but from deep within. A voice, gentle, firm. "I was never silent. You just stopped listening." Tears fell again. This time not in anger, but in realization. For the first time in years, he stopped talking at God and started listening to him. Morning came. He was still lying there. The doors of the church opened slowly. The janitor came in, surprised to see him still there. She tiptoed closer. Then she gasped. He was sitting upright, mouth closed, peacefully. He looked at her and smiled. Not with his lips, but with his eyes. They were full of something different now. Peace, humility, understanding. She knelt beside him and whispered, "Are you okay?" He nodded gently. Then softly, like someone who had just learned how to speak again, he replied, "I'm more than okay. I'm finally whole." Weeks passed. His story spread like wildfire. Not because of the pain he went through, but because of the wisdom that now poured out of him like a spring. People began inviting him to speak, not to preach, not to shout, but to tell the truth in his own quiet way. He would sit in rooms full of broken people and say things like, "Sometimes God's silence is not punishment. It's protection. You think he's ignoring you, but he's actually blocking something worse from reaching you." Or, "When I shouted, God stayed quiet. When I broke down and listened, he began to rebuild me." And the one that made people cry the most, "I thought God wasn't moving because I couldn't feel him. But now I know faith is not about feelings. It's about trusting, even when the room is silent." He went back to that same prayer room every week. But this time, not to complain, not to mock, not to demand. He went to sit, to listen, to rest. Sometimes people would find him sitting there with his eyes closed, a small smile on his lips, and his Bible on his lap. They'd ask, "What are you doing?" And he'd reply, "I'm letting silence speak again." His mouth had closed, but his heart had opened. And the man who once mocked God now lived each day as a reminder that God's silence is never absence. It's preparation. It's deep work. Unseen, but unstoppable. Pain doesn't mean God is absent. Delay doesn't mean God forgot you. And silence doesn't mean he isn't speaking. Sometimes God waits, because what he's building in you is greater than what you're crying for. The end. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe.